Hello. We are coming in live for our Tuesday Night Live on The Reboot Show. As always, I'm joined by Amy Smith and Luke Stowe. Hello, guys.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Sally.
If you are coming in live on LinkedIn, please be sure to drop a 1 below. Let us know where you're coming in from. And if you're coming in on the replay, please drop a 2 below. Now, tonight, we're going to be having a very powerful discussion about the growing use of artificial intelligence in hiring and recruitment processes. So I think to get started, before we dive into the tech, Amy, it'd be great to hear from you relative to your experience around what did the traditional hiring experience maybe look like for a lot of job seekers, especially pre-COVID?
Yeah, so if we're thinking sort of pre-COVID, it was still very much, you would reach out and use your networks. So you could even be bumping into someone down at the local, coffee store in amongst of your office buildings and network with people face to face and, hear about different opportunities that are coming up. You'd be jumping on job boards. You'd be looking at the list of different jobs that are open and the vacancies coming through. You'd be on LinkedIn and you'd be looking at connecting with some recruiters and potential people there as well. So there was a mix, but it was definitely, happened a lot organically in terms of just being able to speak to people that you knew and get referred into different positions as well.
And can I just clarify there, because I know this conversation is we're going to go into the technology, especially with Luke here, but just to confirm, so there was quite a bit of human interaction in that process, so sort of phone calls, maybe in-person discussions, etc.
Yeah, even to the extent of, you could go and hand your resume out to someone face to face, like with a physical piece of paper. Like, I know they exist, but it's hard to do sometimes. Usually we're just used to sending off a PDF resume or a Word document resume, but you could actually, go and hand a physical resume off to people if you wanted to. And in fact, a lot of candidates used to do that as a way to stand out in this digital landscape because of the job boards and the applicant tracking systems that are out there. And a way to sort of cut through that is actually, lo and behold, turn up in person and actually speak to someone in the flesh. So, yeah, that happened a lot.
It's amazing to think that's a distant memory. I don't know about you guys. That's actually how I got started in the workforce.
Yeah, me too.
So obviously technology is becoming a growing part of this conversation, though, and there's a lot of good things that are happening, but also a lot of maybe daunting things, particularly for job seekers. So, like, what are you seeing in terms of some of the areas where technology is starting to be used in these recruitment and hiring processes?
Well, I think that, the real thing here is, should robots be used in job interviews? That's probably a good discussion topic. And part of what's happening here is that, AI and machine learning, powerful algorithms that are able to, both visually and through language, be able to analyze the job applicant really early. Mm-hmm. And they're looking for a few things. They're looking for behavioral aspects of the candidate. They're looking for whether the candidate's suitable based upon, matches of resumes plus what they can find online, perhaps LinkedIn even. And then also the competencies of the person. And they're doing this at speed. And obviously these powerful algorithms are connected to databases into the broader internet and are using all that information to filter through candidates for jobs and to say whether those people are ready and right for the organisation before any human even talks to them. And in some cases, these robots are doing the complete interview process and hiring people without the person ever talking to a human being.
It's pretty daunting. So, but what do you think are the main drivers of using or starting to integrate these technologies? Have you heard of any case where it's actually solely to the benefit of the job seeker, or is it all about cost management, et cetera, from a business perspective?
No, look, it's an interesting point, Sally, and I think the technology has got to be careful, because we do know there's been examples of where Amazon, for example, who were an early pioneer of this type of technology with AI and using machine learning and the algorithms to interview people right the way through and give them jobs without going through any human contact. They found that because the algorithms were built at a time when it was a male-dominated industry technology, you've got to remember that, and probably still is in a lot of ways. But what they found was they weren't getting any female candidates through that process. And it was because the algorithms came with a bias. And we do know that technology algorithms can be built with bias. And therefore, the bias remains in that program as it moves forward. And therefore, that probably doesn't suit the candidates. No. But what I do think, though, is with the right amount of treatment governance over that algorithm and the build of it, and if it's built with the right knowledge base, then it can be very useful for the candidate as well, because we all don't want to hang on to a job application for long. We want it to be speedy. And
you mean from the experience of the job seeker?
Yeah, I want a job and I want it quickly. I don't want to have to wait. So if there's something that can speed up that process, then that's good.
Yeah, well, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, there's actually a lot of commentary in the market, and forever has been, around how, as a job seeker, as a job applicant, that experience has traditionally been quite poor. And there's a lot of sort of mockery, if you like, of actually a lot, recruiters, traditionally speaking, where they never get back to the job applicant. So what are your thoughts on technology being used in more and more ways in the hiring and recruitment process?
Yeah, so it's a great point, because traditionally it's not been great. The candidate experience kind of always just falls by the wayside for a lot of companies, which is a shame, because when in fact your candidates are actually your customers as well. We pay a lot of attention to this customer experience, and they're one in the same. There's actually 11% of candidates who actually have a bad experience with a company, won't ever purchase from that company again, and are likely to probably tell all their friends about it as well. So it is actually important for the bottom line to have a great candidate experience. So where this comes into play most of the time are for those really high volume roles. So it's very appealing for a company, say with the customer service roles, or say in hospitality, who are constantly recruiting and are constantly feeding people through that pipeline. And it is quite difficult, to have those human interactions. I've been a recruiter, and sometimes you need to have like 20 hands and 20 phones to your ears at all times of the day, just to feel that you can keep up with the amount of applications coming through for particular roles. And so the argument for a lot of these technology solutions is that way of feedback for the candidates. There is ways that they can give them a little bit of feedback along that process, to actually give them that tailored feedback that they might be missing, just from the fact that the process can take a lot of time, and there's that human element, and it can be a little clunky, through that system. So there is that argument that it provides that data, and that's coming from the company side of things as well.
So I think it's clear that there are a lot of sort of benefits, but there are also maybe a lot of challenges with this. And we know, just generally speaking with technology, particularly to your point, like around algorithms, there's always a lot of complexity, if you like, and it can be difficult to overcome biases, etc. And we've got a lot of commentary actually coming through, in particular from Mark Boyle. We've got a comment from Moeen as well. So maybe we'll start with you, Luke, around what are some of the risks with using these technologies? Of course, there's cost-saving benefits, et cetera, time efficiencies. To Amy's point, maybe there are some improvements to the job seeker experience, but what are some of the key risks we need to think about?
Yeah, look, I think the key risk is probably that you don't get the right candidate, because you've got bias built into your algorithms, and your machine learning is off kilter, and you just don't get the right person that you're looking for. But I think that a benefit for the organisation in taking out all of these repetitive tasks and giving the opportunity for people to quickly get results and feedback on their applications means that it probably gets overweighed by that risk, and they think to themselves, well, I can speed up the process for the candidates and for the organisation. I can take some cost out probably by doing that, so it's efficient. And so the benefit, I think, will mean that they'll continue to explore this field and this opportunity of using algorithms and machine learning to do part of the interview process. But I think, having human contact is important. And as part of that, they should be doing some type of, whether it's in the middle or at the end, a human having that contact. But I think for initial process, it's probably quite good. And it does make me think, are there going to be companies now that represent the candidates? And maybe there will be some machine, instead of going for an interview yourself, maybe I'll get a robot to do my interview for me.
Well, it's certainly an interesting conversation. I think, the point when it comes to sort of human interaction, there are certain cases where, for example, I think there was an article I read recently where it was referenced that someone managed to get a job in an Amazon warehouse without ever speaking to a human being. So it's quite fascinating. But Amy, it'd be great to hear your thoughts in terms of, to Luke's point, where, if there's, say, bias, or even if there isn't bias built into the algorithm that is reviewing CVs and resumes, but because of this technology automated process, maybe people don't get the sort of the opportunity that they would otherwise get to get the next interview. What does this mean for the job seeker? What should they be thinking about in terms of maybe trying to overcome some of the challenges natively from these technology solutions?
Yeah, well, there is an adaptation that needs to take place. I've actually been through this process as a candidate, and it was quite daunting. I think for a lot of candidates out there, the biggest mistake that they make, and some of the risks that I think will make people miss out on jobs, is they don't actually treat it like a proper interview. If you're going in for a face-to-face interview, you get dressed up, you make sure you're looking your best, you probably get there a little bit early, you prepare yourself. But for these, sometimes because there are mobile devices, you could be driving your car and doing like a weird selfie pose and having the wrong angle, and we all know angles are bad. So you need to actually treat it like a proper interview, and you actually need to get very good at speaking on camera. That's one of the biggest things, is that you can actually, with these processes and systems in place, companies need to get very savvy around, are they just selecting people that actually can present themselves and speak well on camera, or are they selecting the right candidates for the role? And it also, it kind of takes away, to Luke's point around that two-way process. So I think there does need to be that human element in it as well, because from a candidate point of view, a big part of whether you want to work somewhere or not is getting a sense of that culture and getting a sense of that feel as well. So I think on the candidate side of things, you might need to do a little bit more research yourself to really get a sense of the culture in that organisation, and remember that it's a two-way street.
Yeah, and I think that leads into a really interesting conversation. We've got some commentary here from Narelle, who's saying something that stands out for me is the difficulty in the assessment of soft skills that may be an integral part of the role. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because, to Amy's point in terms of highlighting that human interaction, like if there is no human interaction involved from the outset, I mean, what role does it play to be able to pick up on someone's mannerisms and their energy and their tonality? I think is another big part of the discussion.
Yeah, look, I mean, Narelle raises a good question, and I think that my view of this from a tech point of view is that this tech is pretty much here now. I mean, it's been around for a while. It's sophisticated. It's used in lots of different other industries for different purposes. I mean, I do know that some of the suicide prevention lines now use some of this technology to pick up on keywords. Yeah. If someone calls in and then flips them to a person, if there's something, really urgent that needs to happen there for intervention. So it can pick up things like tonality of voice. It can pick up sincerity. It can pick up visuals if it's a camera-based interview. So it's sophisticated. It's not just thinking about, whether this person's got the capability to do the job. It is looking at soft skills. And there's plenty of cases now where that capability is being advanced. So the Amazon example, one of the key things about their interview process is they are looking for competencies and including soft skills of the person within that interview process. So they've got a range of questions they ask. They look for, and also remember that it's not only you being on camera now or on a phone call or submitting your resume, they're actually getting access to all the information online. And if you think about that just for a second, so remember the Uber that you got that you didn't pay for? You forgot, and you got a bad rating from the Uber driver, that's going to come back to haunt you when you're going for one of these jobs. So
are you saying that they have the capability to scrape all of this public data to consolidate, almost in effect, a report on you before you've even applied for a job?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
And that is a major appeal of companies wanting to use it as well, just saying.
So can I ask on that note, we've got an interesting comment here from Alan, and sort of in terms of there will be a need to change the CV and add keywords that invoke the AI to consider you. So without going into all of the technical details, I mean, are keywords on resumes still important if these organisations can scrape all of this data about us? Does it really matter what we put on there?
Amy, do you want to go first or do you want me to have a go?
I've got an extreme view that resumes should get thrown out the window, but that's my extreme view. Because I think we're all online and everyone needs to have an online presence now that's ever evolving and changing with us as we grow, not just a resume from, that you need to update every 2 years, because we don't need to do that anymore. We are living in an agile world. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. But in terms of the applicant tracking systems out there, there's a lot of people that, come up with some little sneaky ways to try and beat the systems, which never work, by the way. Recruiters and people in those hiring roles are pretty savvy. So I've heard of people that, will actually insert the keywords into their resume and use the font or change the font to white, so it actually doesn't pick it up when you first read it. But all you need to do as a recruiter is highlight all of that and you're sprung. So little things like that, trying to cheat the system probably won't work for you, because as Luke said, these machines are very, very intelligent.
Amy and I hardly disagree these days, but we're going to disagree. I mean,
The show is on.
Look, I think resumes are important still. I think, I put a lot of time and effort into mine, many years, and I still want to give my resume to a job application. When I applied for the job here, you guys were grateful that I gave you my resume. I mean, you did put me through those robot tests, but what I'm basically saying to you is I think
practice what you preach, Luke.
A resume plays a part in bona fiding your credentials, and I think that still should remain. But I do think people need to get used to the fact that everything you do in life these days, can be recorded and it can be used in different situations.
So I think there's an interesting question there, and I'm sure we could debate this all evening, but in the context of you suggesting that there's still a place for a resume or for a CV. So if everything we're doing is being tracked, in many cases we are deliberately broadcasting many things about our careers and our personal lives as things progress, would it not be assumed that that's a more accurate reflection of sort of who we are and what we're all about, and therefore it's more comprehensive? Do we need CVs?
Well, I think we do. I just answered that question. I think we do need CVs, because I think that is where you're putting, in a court of law, and maybe this is why someone meant about risk in a court of law, when you went for the job and you found out you were there for a month and it wasn't quite fitting, or you didn't quite understand what was going on, and you took the company to court, or they took you to court for some breach of contract or conduct. I think that you would be in trouble if you said, well, I didn't get a resume, but I did get their last Uber Eats definition. They only got 3 stars because they were a bad customer and they didn't pay, last time they drove through McDonald's or something. I think that would be bad for the organisations.
Yeah,
but in the mix of a candidate going through a process, I think a resume is important, bona fides the credentials. And then I think it's fair for organisations to be able to use any information they have at their disposal to make sure that they are getting the right candidate for the job.
I think that's
Don't
great.
you worry, recruiters. Sorry, I was going to say, don't you worry, Luke. Recruiters, they do their own research in their own way to make sure they're getting the right people for the job.
Sorry, guys, I'm mindful of time. We've got some great commentary coming through. But in closing, from each of you, let's start with you, Amy. Someone's asked a question in relation to human interactions and suggesting that they believe that there should be a human interaction at the beginning of that sort of that hiring process. But given COVID and everything that's happened, technological advancements, do you think that there will be much human interaction within the hiring process in future? Are we going to progress with all this technology and end up doing a backflip because it just doesn't work?
Well, I still think there needs to be a hybrid model, and I think that where this comes into play is very much around those high volume recruitment roles. I think if you're looking for, I call them needle in a haystack roles, where you're, headhunting a CEO that has a rare skill set that you need. If you put them through this process, they'd probably say, go away, I don't want this job at all. This is not the way to treat me as a candidate. But I think for the high volume roles, I don't think companies will have a choice moving forward, because I think the technology is going to increasingly get better. So a lot of these, problems and challenges and risks will get ironed out over time. And I do think we'll move more towards particularly the top of funnel being very much an automated process, and really just speaking with a human at the end to really sort of confirm that that's the right placement for that person.
And yourself, Luke, I can tell you're eager to say something. What about the future of recruitment businesses? Which ones are going to lead the pack?
Look, the ones that are robots, I think. No, obviously human interaction is the favoured, I think, by everyone. And, there's been a number of comments made by a number of people tonight, and it's great to see all of our normal followers
Karen,
on Tuesday night. Karen, Alon, Jenna before. I think that what this means is that we just need to get used to the fact that robotics, AI, machine learning, and these algorithms, which do have ethical problems, and there's a number of people saying that, and I agree. I think what we've got to watch for is AI ethics is a big topic these days. You can't build these things with bias in them and not fix it. So what we're going to watch for is that. But I think we live in a world now where technology is going to play this part moving forward, and we just all need to be prepared for it.
Let's get excited. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Luke, and thank you to all of our Tuesday Night Live listeners, audience members on here with us this evening. We will be back again next Tuesday, but in the near future, we've got Amy and Luke with our Friday weekly newsfeed. Is it 12 p.m.?
I think it's 12 p.m. I can check my schedule every week. Amy tells me it's 12.
You miss it every week, Luke. Now, 12 p.m. Friday. Looking forward to it. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Make sure to subscribe on the Reboot Show YouTube channel to catch it.
And we'll see you very, very soon. Thanks guys.
For watching. Bye, guys.
Bye.